gonna steal all side, ride me, baby. I ain't never gonna stop. Come on now, baby. Ride me straight to the top. Yeah, straight to the top.
Bad ideas, good stories. Number 10, I guess. 1, 2, 3. We're
Hi.
on. Hi.
What's up?
Hey. So yeah, bad ideas, good stories. Number 10. And Pat's alone with a stranger.
With a stranger.
With a stranger. Who are you?
I don't even know who you are.
So for those people watching at home,
Hi.
This is Jenn, and Jenn runs a podcast. What's your podcast called?
My podcast is called Why Choose One. It's all about,
I didn't
horrible...
ask that yet.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Fuck you. You know what my podcast is about? Sexuality, polyamory, BDSM, kind of all gist, swinging.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
But just to explain for people at home,
Yes.
Dusty isn't here because part of his job, he came in contact with somebody who is COVID positive. Is that the right term?
Yeah.
And so because he might have developed a couple symptoms that could be interpreted as linked, he's self-isolating for a little while, which is kind of lame. Yeah.
That sucks.
So that's where he's at, and that's why he's not with us today. We'll still try and make it entertaining as much as I can with this person. I don't know. We've known each other a day or two.
A day or two.
Yeah. How long have we known each other? When did you meet me? Or when did I meet
It was
you?
my first event, actually.
Was that the Lupercalia?
It was a Lupercalia. I think it was 5 years ago.
So that was, Lupercalia is an ongoing, up until the last couple of years, BDSM conference.
It is. It's
And,
fun.
Yeah. They do seminars, a few seminars. Did a few seminars on like a Saturday and then a Sunday. 3 seminars, 3 options of seminars each space. Can we get the door up there and like make sure that there's no sound? So yeah, we met 5 years ago, and we started chatting and being buddies, and one thing led to another, and we ended up playing together. And now you're an educator.
Yes, I am.
In the community.
That's kind of cool, huh?
Right? It catches up with you.
I'm so grown up now.
That's all it takes, I've been around, had stuff done to me, done stuff to people enough that I can tell other people how to do stuff and get stuff done to me.
I feel like I have that level of education now. I have that, at least the minimal level of education to educate, like, even, I feel like, I don't know, I could probably do an advanced class.
Yeah. Well, what would you educate if you had to do a class? Like, let's say an event came up and they said, "Oh, we want Jenn to come," or and come on down. And
ironically, probably medical play with scalpels and sutures,
Mhm.
or because I've been actually asked to do that.
That's pretty advanced stuff.
Yeah. And then also probably flogging or mindfuckery.
So would that just be like an interrogation scene, or?
No, it would probably be more like kind of maybe a discussion of how you can just make the scenes more I don't know, complex, I guess, and how to really get into the psyche of things versus and getting to know your bottoms so you can really fuck with their head.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what you do on a daily basis.
On a daily basis. Now you have to keep in mind that most people listening to this podcast are friends, family, acquaintances from a vanilla arena. It's not a kink oriented thing, but I don't mind going there. I don't mind talking there because I think B, my partner, and I, B obviously, we were probably presenting on that weekend when you met us.
Actually, I think you guys, I don't know, maybe you were, but maybe you weren't. I just remember, I don't remember actually going to any of your classes.
But that being said, I've been doing it a long time,
Yes.
and we were educating at that time, and so part of what I want to get into is definitions of kink and different play and BDSM culture for people that aren't familiar, because it's going to be kind of hard. It's like when we talk about chopper stuff down here, and it's a bunch of chopper guys talking about chopper stuff that the people at home may not have a goddamn clue what ape hangers or jockey shifts or any of that stuff is. So I want to take a step back for the people that aren't. That's why I was hoping Dusty would be here, because he was going to be the vanilla man asking questions.
Right?
As opposed
because it's hard to think in that vanilla mindset again.
Yeah, once you step out, what is it, the Red Bull, you eat that pill, nothing's quite the same.
I haven't been quite normal since that time and that place.
Okay, yeah, right? So what would you define vanilla relationships as?
see, there's a bit of like I feel like honestly, vanilla is people who aren't doing, you know, really kinky shit. You know,
Well,
like
what would kinky shit be?
well, you know, like having like a dom sub relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a mix. Like I kind of call them. Oh, I can't remember the name. Fuck. Oh, fuck, I tapped. Sorry, guys. Sound. I'm trying not to make the sound bad. But you know, like there's you know how when they talk about like vanilla and chocolate and you mix it and you know it's
Swirl?
a swirl.
Mhm.
I find the vanilla swirl. A lot of people are normally vanilla swirls since 50 Shades of Grey has come out. You know, people like get into like the choking and the whatever, and that's kinky shit, right? But I feel like there's the people who are like more into it and have deeper fetishes and you know go to like events to learn how
That's
to do
one
it
thing
properly.
events are very good for when you find them, that you can
Yeah.
go and see where on the curve you fall on the kinky curve.
Totally.
One of my favorite authors on, you know, power exchange stuff is an author, Dr. Guy Baldwin. And Guy Baldwin is a psychotherapist. He's been around forever. He's been working with issues surrounding power exchange relationships since probably the 80s. He's a very, you know, well-established individual. And one thing that he said in an interview was kinky are those people that choose to incorporate some element in their intimate relationships or sex life that the person next door doesn't.
Yeah.
And now, how wide an umbrella is that? It's a pretty wide
It's true.
umbrella. You know, somebody wants to do some role play. Somebody wants to incorporate some sensation play. Somebody wants to incorporate multiple partners. Somebody wants to incorporate any element. That is kinky.
You know what I think it is? I think there. You know what is a defining difference? Whether or not you can do it and enjoy it without sex.
Well, no, because there's lots of people, they have kinky sex.
I know, and that's fair, but like I feel like there's people like I don't know. That's a good argument.
Yeah, but there is an element of kink which is completely removed from sexual relation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, there's also androgynous people, asexual people
Yeah.
that have like go to body modification to the point where they nullify parts of themselves and they live like non-sexual lifestyles. So all of those are valid under the kinky umbrella. But I think that yeah, this is going to turn into me. No, I don't want to monopolize the space, but I think that that's a big thing because there's a lot of confusion when people hear the word kink.
Yeah.
They automatically assumes it's fucking.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's accurate.
It is not accurate. There is tons of people that I played with that there was no sexual anything, not even kissing,
Yeah, no component of.
right? Nothing.
But it's still intimate.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one time I did. I always forget one rope.
Ichinawa. Yeah, single rope techniques. Yeah.
I always forget the word. But that was one of the most intimate kink moments I've ever had, and it was still, you know, like a little sadistic, you know, like a
There's
little.
some power dynamic in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or pain, like sensation play.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But it was probably one of the most intimate kind of scenes I've ever been in. It was very like connected and intense.
But there was no intimate. Well, I guess there would be an emotional or psychological intimacy, but no physical intimacy other
at
than
all.
just physical touching, and
Yeah.
there's no genital sensation kind of stuff. Yeah.
None at all.
Well, and it's weird. You on your podcast, you interviewed Sir Scott, and I went to one of Sir Scott's seminars, and again, he's an older Leatherman gentleman who's been around for a long time,
Long time.
and he said
Decades.
it's all erotic, but you can be mentally erotic, it can be emotionally erotic, or physically erotic, and if there isn't that element of eroticism, are you really doing kink, or are you just doing formal ritual, you know, endurance ritual? You know, you go to a First Nations Sundance, there's some pretty heavy stuff going on, but it wouldn't be kinky because it's like, it's an emotionally transformative thing, right? As opposed to when you add that erotic component into it, then it becomes, you know, yeah, I guess a kink thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your podcast is heavily poly based, more like, because I'm a kinky guy as opposed to like heavy poly.
Yeah.
Can you explain for the people at home or anybody here what you define poly as versus, I guess, I don't know, open relationships or vanilla monogamy kind of relationships? What the differences?
So polyamory is where you are dating another person, right? So me and my fiance, we're poly. And I want to date a boy or a girl or whoever I want, really. And that's allowed. So we go and we have that relationship. There's different levels of polyamory. So there's, hierarchy, or, where there's their primary and secondary polyamorous relationships.
So your primary would be, let's say, your fiance,
Yeah.
and then your secondary would be a boyfriend or a girlfriend on the
Yes.
side. And you maintain that as a relationship. It's not
Yes.
just a one-night stand.
No. And it's someone I see like regularly, probably just not as much as my fiance. It's probably also not going to be as intimate as I am with my fiance.
But there's a level of maintenance that's involved with that, like emotional.
Totally.
Okay.
Lots of maintenance. And it's like dating someone. You're dating a person, especially if they're single. I find that connection becomes a little more maintenance-y.
So polyamory specifically is multiple relationships and
Yes.
maintaining all the stuff that goes along with
Yes,
relationships.
and you can love each person, and it looks a million different ways. Some people date couples together, two couples dating. Some people date just outside, and then they create a different web that
There's
way.
polyamorous families.
Totally.
That people just live in one big household and everybody's a lover of the other people, right?
Absolutely. Like it's actually incredible. One of the best families I've ever seen. They brought all their children under one roof, all the couples under one roof, and they had different relationships. There was like an extra kind of like outsider, like a single person that was kind of but dating a part of the group, but they all still lived under one roof. All of their different kids from different parents, live under
like
one
a communal family.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And I actually find that very beautiful,
This is my personality. I would find it immensely complicated. It's like, whose emotions am I pissing off today? Who do I have to navigate? Is there some jealousy over here? Is there some frustration over here?
But once you get past that point, because I think every relationship has that little point, of like that jealousy point, or that like how do I get through normal day life with these people in my life. But they've kind of created a system where it becomes more of a community, and they share responsibilities. They all take turns with the kids.
In a lot of ways, a lot of that, it has to do away with the hierarchy unless that's consented to. Like power dynamics, where when you've got like, I don't know, 3 women, 2 men in a relationship thing, who is the quote unquote pants wearing person in that dynamic? Is it the boy? Is it the girl? Like all of that stuff gets swept out, and then you have to reestablish it on your own, I guess, consented, negotiated.
And there's no pants wearing. I find that the best ones that I find that work really well, unless it's a kink dynamic, then nobody's wearing the pants.
So it's all a collective decision making for the greater good.
Exactly.
And when you say a kink dynamic, I know what you mean, but explain it for the people that would be enough, somebody establishing or consenting to assume or relinquish authority.
Yeah, absolutely. So like that would be like a dom sub kind of situation, dominant being the person who's taking control of the situation, or there's dominant is a very wide definition, but they're the top. They're the person, like making the choices, where the submissives are usually the ones following.
They're agreeing to give up some control in the relationship so somebody else can adopt that control.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Guy Baldwin calls that a power exchange relationship.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
2 people choose to exchange power. One person gives a little, the other person. And I think in vanilla society, there's an implicit expectation that's very closely linked with patriarchy, that the man is the dominant character.
Yes.
And as a guy who is friends with a lot of submissive men who really feel that's who they are in their heart, that want to give up their power to an authoritative female partner, that's it's taboo.
Yes.
They have to deal with like their internalized masculinity in order to give up that power to, a female authority figure, which is, you meet a lot of submissive men in our community, at least in the kink community, because I'm not a poly or a swinger guy, but in the kink community, that it's on the down low.
Yeah.
They don't wear it on their sleeves as much as a dominant man would, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I feel like the dominant's flaunted a little bit more that they're dominant.
Well, we take up space.
Yes.
For the record, I identify as a dominant male. Like 99.98% of the time. I like to assume the dominant role in a relationship.
Where I'm like a good equation for me is I'm 50% submissive. I also identify as like switchy, if people don't know, that is where I can kind of swing both ways. but I prefer submitting.
So switching, that's what that means, that
Yes.
you can choose either or.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in my daily life, in my everyday life, I have to be very dominant in my healthcare profession.
Yeah.
And then I also have to be, I also have a very particular way of living. So I have a tendency to need a little bit of control around my everyday life. So if I'm so my fiance, for example, is what we call my daddy dom, which isn't like an incestuous daddy. It's like a caring dominant.
It's like a nurturing,
Yes.
guiding, compassionate more role from a dominant aspect.
Absolutely. So so he has this role where like he allows me to kind of like real life, like because we do 24/7, right? So 24/7 is that we kind of practice our DS 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Do you find that exhausting at all?
Never.
Do you ever have debrief periods where you kind of get to the, like, this is our debrief breakfast when neither of us has an authority role and we can talk about what's going on equal footing?
I feel like, yes, we have a 24/7, but we do have that natural ebb and flow of this is real life, this is dom sub life. And it just kind of comes and goes because he does have to give up some control when I'm very particular about things. Because I think I'm a little bit OCD about like certain particular things in my life. Like
How you want, the house kept.
yes,
Or,
exactly.
like the,
And so giving I feel like a lot of dominants can't give up that control, and so it's really good for me. It's good for our dynamic that we can do 24/7. But at the end of the day, his word is law, right? Like if he tells me, he's like, I want you to do this, and I'm like, I don't want to do this for whatever reason. I'm like wigging out, and he's like, I want you to do this. And then I explain my side, and if my side does not sound justified...
Mesh up with what he wants still?
Exactly. Which is a bit of a slave dynamic, and I give up that consent. I consensually have always said that, but if he's being serious, I'm like, is that an order?
Well, that's a good question. Is that an order? Is
Yeah.
is this coming back to where we are in our consent or our negotiated power exchange?
Yes.
Or is this just us being in a relationship?
Totally. So I'm just to tell him, like, is this an order? And he's like, yes. And then I follow because that is my 50%. That's my submissive side where I'm like, I know you know what's best for me, so I know I'm going to do that.
Well, even if he doesn't know what's best for you, I know that my best interest is your best interest.
Yes.
And that you care about me, and it's coming from a place of compassion
Yes.
versus just like a tyrant, hitting
Yeah.
the gavel down.
And it's not about right and wrong shit. Like, I have an opinion on everything, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I'm very opinionated. So, and I like things a certain way. So when I'm opinionated, then he listens to my opinion. But if it's still like if I'm say just being anxious, right, or if I'm just
strong
like
anxiety and all that stuff. Yeah.
or if I'm just like worried about something that is so pointless, then he's like, "That's enough. This is an order, and go and do it." And then I'm like, "Fine."
But you negotiate to that dynamic.
Yes.
And there's tons of relationships where it's not. I think there's another element that people think that this is like an implicit chauvinism or sexism involved with BDSM.
Yeah.
Because they're so familiar with the male dom, female bottom
Yes.
dynamic, which would be considered heterosexual, patriarchal standards. They don't see the female top, female bottom, the male top, male bottom. They don't see the female top, male bottom. They don't
Yeah.
see that other stuff. But in this community, we're all in there together.
Yeah.
And then you have transgendered people that are involved with the power dynamics. So
Yeah.
all of those standard expectations on the implicit chauvinism part of BDSM are turned on their ear. Although me being generally, let's say a Caucasian male, cisgendered male, mostly heterosexual, I end up becoming in the community, especially because I identify as a dominant, right? The archetype of oppression in our society.
Yes.
And so in the kink community, I have to be very careful about the footsteps that I leave and how I tread in relationship with other people, because I don't want my implicit privilege to come out without it being consented and negotiated.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of interesting because even when I top, and people haven't, say if someone hasn't seen me top before, I play with a lot of heavier bottoms because I like to play
Hard.
I get that that primal animalistic, I get that savageness, and I have a hard time reining that in sometimes when I get really into a scene for a long period of time. So I like to pre-negotiate that, and I need them to really be clear on their words for consent, right?
Well, their limits and how when they choose to withdraw consent
Yes.
from a specific scene.
Yes.
See, that's another, I think, misunderstanding people have, is that like, oh yeah, you're going to do kink, you give up all your rights.
No.
Okay.
I have so much rights.
Yes. Hopefully.
All the rights.
Well,
I say what happens with this motherfucking body.
yeah, well, right. Master Talon once told me, and I don't know about their pronouns, but the Master Talons from California, Power Exchange winner, competitions, said, if you don't want to speak, I don't want to listen. And I think that's if you don't want to say what your issues are and put these on the table, then you can't get upset if I don't address those limits or those issues, And there's a lot of people, myself included, that won't engage with people that refuse to give you clear boundaries.
Yeah.
If I say, hey, what's going to happen between you and I? What's on the table? And you're wishy-washy, like, I don't know, maybe we'll just see how it goes. I'm like,
right?
Well, how it's going to go is you're leaving.
I'll never play with someone. If someone's like, I have no limits, I just want to play. And I'm like, get the fuck out.
I'm shaving your eyebrows off right now.
Right? I'm going to stab your eardrum with a fucking safety pin,
I'm going to take some
motherfucker.
clippers and cut the front part of your hair. And
Where's the cheese grater?
It doesn't even need to be painful. I'm just going to shave your eyebrows or, shave your hair and wait till...
Cool. Ready to go?
Are we good? You're good. 1, 2, 3, slap. All right, we had some technical difficulties, so we're back.
As if nothing happened.
As if nothing happened. You won't even notice.
So we were... I was actually going to bring up the comment about top energy.
Top energy versus bottom energy?
Yeah, well, I was actually gonna, because my 50%, right? I was explaining my submissive side.
Switching, yeah.
And so the other 50%, my top energy, is kind of fascinating because I don't get a lot of respect as a top, right? Wherever I go, people don't really like.
It's tough when you switch and you're known as a bottom, and then
Yes.
suddenly you decide to adopt that dominant role.
Yes.
Especially in a public community setting.
Absolutely, everybody knew me as a bottom, and it's kind of interesting because everybody knew me as a bottom that played with more intensive players. So they thought that I was this super hardcore bottom, which we all know, if you've ever seen me do anything, I'm not a super heavy bottom.
Well, you can adopt a heavy bottom space but not want to receive specific play.
Yes.
And I think that's, I'll do whatever you want, or you do whatever you want to me, but these are my limits.
Yeah.
But you can go pretty deep with that submission and that service and whatever you say goes, but
Yeah.
I'm really not into pain. Or you can't tie me up and take away my mobility.
Yes.
I reserve the right to be able to run away if it gets too heavy.
Yeah.
Right? So that stuff, you could still be a pretty heavy bottom, but not necessarily a masochist or not necessarily
Yes.
a bondage bottom. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I've played with a lot of people, and I kind of know I feel like a lot of people just kind of just hit as hard as they can and have no idea what the fuck they're doing. So I feel like that's a fairly big thing that made me realize I'm like, okay, it's either I can't take it and I hate pain,
I'm in the wrong place,
or I can't get in the right headspace for it. But some people I've played with and I've been able to take lots. And I don't know if it's
there's a building, there's a crescendo that you build it up.
Yes. If once someone warms me up properly, say if you're receiving pain and say someone is caning you, it's just this long cane, then they can just tap you, and if you're cold, your skin is physically cold, it's gonna hurt and it's gonna sting. But once you get warm, then it becomes
Just another sensation, a building of sensation.
Yeah, it feels like something. But if I have to get I have to get past that warm stage of this fucking sucks. This fucking sucks. And then I get mad and I throw fits, and a lot of dominants don't like
temper tantrum
when I want to deck them after they hurt me. Yeah.
Well, there's different personalities, and I think every single personality that comes into this community or this type of play has a certain set of conditions that accompany it, baggage, traumas, and preferences that they bring in. And if two mesh, that's great and makes for a great time. If two don't mesh, then they're going to be running into some problems. And I've engaged with some people that we just didn't mesh. And there's nothing wrong with them, and there's nothing wrong with how I play.
Yep.
It's just that we have different sets of circumstances that we're going in expecting, or that we're looking for, and our stuff doesn't mesh. And that's as long and short, you know what I mean? And when they do mesh, it's great. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Totally. I could have the exact same scene, the exact same
thing happening to me, exact same sensation or pain, but if it's given to the wrong person, the energy's weird, then it's just that. It's just the energy's weird.
Well, two individuals could say whatever they wanted to at work, and if you like one individual and you get along and you've got a good rapport with them, it's not offensive. But if there's another person and they say the exact same thing, but you don't get along with them, you don't have a good rapport, it's potentially offensive or problematic, right?
Definitely.
I think for people that may not be used to the terminologies, I think we need to review that BDSM stands for bondage and domination, or bondage and discipline. And then you've got sadism and masochism, or sensual magic, or whatever you want to bring up to the table. So BDSM. So if you're in, and I think this is one of the biggest confusions that people don't understand about the community is, as soon as somebody says hold my arms, you're now doing BDSM. As somebody says, well, can't you be a little rougher with me, you're doing BDSM. As soon as you spank a butt, one little spank, you are now doing BDSM. And that can carry to full immobility. One of the things that I specialize in, and one of my favorite, is shibari, which is the Japanese rope art. It's artistic rope bondage, which I've traveled to Japan to learn about. That's my favorite kink. But then I'm also identify as a leatherman in some ways with that old school leather mentality. I've been mentored by some pretty established people that taught me what they do and how they do it. Although I'm kind of leaning out of that way. I think that's my ethics. I really like that the Japanese aesthetic a little bit more, and the approach towards cathartic, caring bondage, playing in that, as opposed to like that hard impact kind of play, which is something that a lot of people are into still.
Yes,
right? So
absolutely,
the umbrella of kink is huge,
massive.
Yes, so I might sit down at what's called a munch, which is people meeting, and they hang out and they get to know the community.
It's a good safe place for beginners.
Yes. So you sit down at a munch, and I might meet somebody who likes to wear diapers, and I might meet somebody who really likes to dress up in a mascot costume and have sex in a mascot costume. I might meet somebody who really wants to be on the bottom of, a tickle play scene, and then I'm like the S&M guy. You know what I mean? And so that umbrella is pretty wide, right? So where does it fall? And I think that goes back to, do our kinks line up?
Yeah.
Because if we mesh, fucking A, let's engage with each other. But if we don't mesh, there's no obligation for us to engage with each other. Right?
Yeah.
Hey, even if our interests mesh, but we don't click, there's no obligation for us to engage with each other. And I can withdraw that consent at any time. Like, sorry, this isn't working for me. And that's a pivotal point. I believe that the underground fetish community have been doing the consent, negotiation, respect thing for years, and it's only now coming on the play where how much are we respecting each other's consent and making space for each other.
Yes. I really think that things have really changed over the decades that BDSM has been a thing, but I think that I particularly think there was a shift somewhere along the lines of 50 Shades of Grey. I think that there was a lot of people who wanted to be kinky but weren't doing it correctly and were hurting people. And I also think that the consent thing wasn't even in 50 Shades of Grey, if we want to go there, but
I think the internet.
Yeah, it doesn't show a lot of real cool consent, like real...
Oh, 50 Shades of Grey is a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
It is not an accurate representation of how to negotiate
at
or a consensual relationship.
At all.
There's a lot of implicit... It's fantasy. It's fantasy.
Totally.
And there's a lot of implicit expectations that this guy just adopts the authority role and she doesn't have a say in it. And when she withdraws her consent, he keeps violating her consent and basically... stalking her.
Right?
There's a ton of stuff in there that's problematic.
Yes.
And at least from people that are educated in negotiation and consent and, what are you into? How do you like it done? Mm-hmm. What are your safe words? Yeah. How do you withdraw consent? And then you would be like, do you respect? How do you show me that you respect when I withdraw consent? Like, all of that stuff was washed over in that movie.
110%. Mm-hmm. Even the aftercare component, I noticed, which I'm not an aftercare person. For those of you who don't know, aftercare is literally after the scene, you care for the person. So some people have, this cathartic moment where they purge whatever negativity that they experienced or traumatic event and they relived it. And then the aftercare component is when they're crying or they're sad or they just need a little love.
And you bring them back from that space back to here.
To reality.
Yes.
Yes. So I do think that, like, even that, you know, like, it didn't even...
Well, there's zero.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, he's taking a brand new newbie and doing, you know, whatever, right?
Well, man, it's almost cultish, where he removes her from her safety zone. He transplants her in a foreign environment. He says, these are the conditions to live here. You're going to live here and be my slave now, when she has zero experience and zero... In our community, you know, like in the BDSM community, that's dangerous.
Super
you
fucking
know,
dangerous.
Yeah, that guy was a perfect example of a power-tripping, non-ethical dominant.
100%.
Yeah.
Which, so now I think that there's, because it's such a mainstream thing, and I feel like there's not a lot of people who are actually interested in BDSM, they don't actually do the research, what they need to learn in order to do it safely and ethically.
I also feel that the pornography, the common vanilla, for other words, pornography, is BDSM. Yeah. Like there's these implicit expectations of dominance and submission, of not abuse. Well, if it's non-consensual, it's abuse, but of sensation play, control, bondage. You know, holding hair, making people do things. But that has been pushed into the mainstream vanilla sexuality without the aspects of negotiation, without the aspects of discussion and aftercare and debriefing. How was that for you? Are you okay? Do you need to talk about anything that happened, that you want to do it again or that you don't want to do it again? Or even in the middle, hey, you just gave me feedback that this was kind of like a heavy thing. Is that cool? You know, they don't talk about that in pornography. And most young people today are getting sex education from porn. Yes, exactly. So, you know, I think you asked me last night, like, oh, what kind of like adult content do you watch? I'm like, I don't watch BDSM porn. Yeah. You know, because are these people really into it, or are they doing it for a check? Is it a performance, which is fantasy based, but are they making it clear that this is a fantasy performance? And I worry about the next generation of young people coming up that are getting their sex education from pornography.
I know, it's going to be fucked. It's going to be fucked. So fucked to see it, you know, like 20 years from now even, honestly. And, you know, it's amazing because even a guy who found me so a guy found out that I was into kink. He didn't even know the whole story about how I got into kink or what I even identify as. He had no idea. And so he didn't know that I was a switch. He didn't know that I felt out energies based on, you know, like if a wimpy guy comes up to me and he's like, can I dominate you? I'm gonna be like, fuck no, you can't. Like, I need a guy that's gonna like fuck my shit up.
But at the same time, some fucking alpha male douchebag who has this implicit expectation, because he's that guy, that he automatically has the right to dominate you, will think that he's got that thing, but he hasn't gone through the, hey, how are you? What are you into? What kind of stuff are you interested in? I can accommodate that.
So this guy comes up to me, so we go for coffee, and within 20 minutes, he just puts his hand on my hair and pulls my hair, and he's like, yo, like that, you dirty whore? And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Who are you, first off? Second off, to me, in my head, the energy you're giving off right now is like I would destroy you. Like, I could eat you alive. Sexually. Not even kink-wise. Like, what the fuck?
So he figured that was his game. He just has to, like, pull your hair and call you names.
Totally.
Yeah, I like to call those guys the dick pic doms.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, so their entire profile... Okay, for those that aren't familiar, there's a website called FetLife. It's like Facebook for kinky people. And you build a profile, and you explain what you're into, and you meet like-minded people, and you can educate yourself. And these guys, those specific ones, they figure if they stand up when they get in a blowjob, they're a dom. They pull your hair while you're sucking their dick. They're a dom. And they come at the bottoms with this attitude of like, I'm going to do this to you. It's like, what's your name?
How many people have you played with? Do you have references?
Well,
like,
as a top, I get people throwing bottom like offers at me. You know, like, I want a bottom for you. And I'm like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
I like who have you played with that can vouch for you being a safe player that isn't going to
Yes.
suddenly scream my consent's been violated?
Yes,
You know,
which is a huge problem in our scene right now.
Oh, I've taken a step away from the scene. I'm lucky that I'm in a monogamish relationship. We'd like to say we're open to options, but monogamish, and it's been incredibly healthy because I don't have to engage with anybody who's a loose cannon.
Yes.
And I see a lot of people being thrown under the bus because they choose to engage with fragile individuals that don't know what they're getting into.
Yeah, that's why I won't play with any bottoms because of the way I am as a top. You know, like I don't play with any bottoms unless I know them fairly well.
Well, that's ideally how play should happen.
Right?
There's this movement for pickup play, and in the vanilla world, there's this movement towards one night stands or casual Tinder hookups.
Yeah.
And then when things turn south, all of a sudden it's like buyer's remorse.
Yeah, but it's worse, even worse than one night stands because this is actually harming people.
You're
and can be
incorporating
abusive.
taking someone's power,
Yeah.
immobility, safe words, potentially aggressive, rough play that could leave marks or emotional damage if a person hasn't been negotiated with.
Yes.
So without consent, BDSM isn't BDSM, it's assault.
Abuse.
It's abuse, yes. And I think that's a huge thing. It's not kink without consent. And people need to appreciate and recognize that, you know.
Absolutely.
This is a piece of paper I have here that's actually a seminar that we do to introduce people to. And there's it's very important to recognize that several of the activities in sexual BDSM play would be illegal if there was no consent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the people that are there, though, are consenting to do this thing. But we still deal with a lot of moral judgment.
Yes.
From people swooping into our lowly community and saying what you're doing is problematic. And I find that very, very interesting. Like,
you know, I find the people who judge the most actually are interested in it. Because I had a girlfriend who was literally like, I can't believe you did that. Oh my goodness. Like,
tell me more.
Well, this is the thing. Literally, like after school, you know, we went to school together. I did this for 2 years. When she first found out, she was appalled. And then, you know, after I finished school, she was all of a sudden like, you know, I'm kind of jealous that you get to do this and I really wanted to try it. And I'm like, you were the most judgmental motherfucker when I first started this shit.
Oh yeah, they live vicariously through you, but at
Yeah.
the same time they're judging you, but they want to know all the lurid details.
I think it's the stigma you have to have when you grow up and you don't know like an open-minded situations. You know, there's like that small town mentality of, you know, political things that we could talk about later, but you know, small town mentality is that like you are monogamous and you're faithful and everyone fucking cheats, let's be honest.
Eventually, but it's
Yeah.
okay to lie about cheating,
Yes.
but it's not okay to be open about being open in your relationship.
100%.
One is moral because you're lying about it, and the other is immoral because you're open about it.
Isn't it fucked?
Yeah, that's a double standard and an incredible hypocrisy in our society.
I fucking hate it because people get like weird about me, you know, like being poly. Like even family members have like ostracized us because we're poly.
But if you're married and you fucked 5 other people outside of like the
Yes.
bond of your marriage, that's cool.
Are you telling me that there's not like, I mean, if you even like tallied up the people that are currently listening to this motherfucking podcast, how many of you fuckers actually cheated? Probably a fucking lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm doing it ethically.
So okay,
Win.
with me, I was in a lot of long-term relationships, and sooner or later, well, not a lot, but like enough that after a certain amount of years,
Yes.
You get the wandering eyes, and
Yes.
I realized how much I was denying who I really was.
Yes.
You know, so I'm like, I put it on the back burner. I lied about what I wanted, lie about who I was, and eventually something would happen. Maybe you're getting into this because things aren't working and you're getting into a loveless relationship, but somebody over here starts paying attention to you and compassion to you and is interested in you while the person you're locked in isn't anymore. So it makes sense that you start meshing with this person that's into you, and eventually I would cheat, and I felt horrible about me ethically and whatever. So I ended one relationship, and I decided I'm no longer going to ever be in a monogamous relationship, and I kind of did the friends with benefits thing for a while, and I was honest right from the get-go, like, look, let's not turn this into something it isn't. This is our relationship. It might be 11 p.m. till 2 a.m., but that's what we have, you know, and we can hang out, go to movies, but we're not going to be that thing. And then I found out that this was, well, kind of poly, but I didn't want the maintenance that was going along with that. You know, I needed an open relationship. And when I finally was able to find that, that was a lifesaver for me, because I was no longer conflicted about what is that? Cognitive dissonance, what you know and what you feel collide, you know? I had this moral conditioning in me that I was immoral because I had these wants and these needs, but the societal standards of you need to be in this little tiny box were making me be immoral. And as soon as I said, well, this box doesn't work for me, I'm going to have this type of relationship, all of a sudden I was no longer ethically conflicted.
And you felt guilt-free, right? That guilt went away.
But there's responsibility attached to that.
There is.
There's a huge amount of responsibility that people don't realize. You don't get to go do whatever the fuck you want without consequences. You need to have transparency. You need to have communication. You need to have negotiation. You need to have consent in order to maintain a relationship like that. Otherwise, I like to say this: if only one person in the relationship knows that they're poly, it's cheating.
Which happens all the
cheating.
fucking time.
I'm poly. My partner isn't. They don't know that I'm poly, but you know.
You know, there's so many things that I wanted to bring up now that you said all that. Like, legit, there's people out there who say that they're poly and they're not, and then their wife calls me and they're like, "Oh my god, you're sleeping with my husband," and I'm like, "What the fuck?"
Well, I'm a big believer that if you're going to be negotiating, you need to negotiate with both partners.
Yes,
or that needs to be on the table.
That was my learning point 100%. You know, that happened about like 3 years ago, and I was like, never again. If anybody wants to date me, you bet your fucking ass I'm meeting everyone involved.
Well, it should be, you know, and the fact is, like, let's discuss this. Like, we are friends with benefits.
Yeah.
You come to our house, you visit, we hang out, we play, but I've never met your partner. Although we're invited to your wedding. So
this is very true.
yeah. So that comes into play. But you run a poly podcast. So I think it's a safe to assume
that he guests on.
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
right?
That's safe to assume that there's no lack of consent happening there.
Yeah.
I had one friend that I was kind of mentoring in the community that was engaging with somebody who said they were in an open relationship, but didn't give a flying fuck about what that open relationship, the parameters of that were. And so when the one partner started saying, "Hey man, you know, you're starting to take liberties with my partner," he's like, "Well, it's not my problem. You need to discuss it with your partner." And I'm like, technically, if you're considering yourself to be ethical poly, it is your problem when you're causing issues in this relationship. You take a step back and renegotiate that stuff. So yeah, it's a tough one because there is a lot of navigating in order to maintain an open relationship dynamic without people getting hurt and jealous and all of that stuff, because it will bubble up.
Yes, and you know what? And a lot of people say like, "Oh, I can't do poly or I can't do open relationships because I'll find jealousy." And everyone feels jealousy. I feel jealousy. Like, not like everyone has this like stigma that just because you feel jealous, it is an impossible workable feeling. You know, you cannot get through it. It's not like a different other emotion like happy. You can't be happy. Or if you're sad, you can never get out of sadness. You know, it is an absolutely outrageous concept to think like I can never not be jealous.
Well, people run away from discomfort.
Yeah.
They don't want to go into those ugly emotions. They say, I'm supposed to avoid those. And it's funny, this leather woman I know, she's like a gay leather woman, been established for a long time. She told me that neurosis is the chronic avoidance of pain. It's a psychological condition which involves a chronic avoidance of pain. So you only do the things that feel good, and you run away from accountability. You run away from responsibility. You run away from that uncomfortable elements of, wow, I'm jealous. Where does that come from? What about me is making me feel jealous about this relationship?
Exactly. What insecurities do I have is the reason why I'm feeling jealous. Am I worried that my guy is going to go somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
he's going to love me less?
Exactly. Give me less attention. You know, like, are they going to be better in bed than I am? Mm-hmm. You know, like, are they going to have this mystical, magical pussy or dick? You know, like... But that's never the case. I feel like that's never the
Not if
case.
you're in a good relationship in the first place.
Yes.
And you aren't seeking to replace that relationship.
Exactly. Poly, rule number 1. Do not fucking do poly if you want to replace your partner. Because then what you're doing is just seeking what's on the market and you're going to hurt someone in the process.
You're tire kicking. You're at the car place and you're just checking out you're taking everything for a test ride till you find the one you want to buy.
Exactly.
And that's not poly.
No.
Well, you can be a slut. There's nothing wrong with being slutty, you know? And that's both genders.
Yes.
I was at a conference one time or a workshop, and we all had to self-identify who we were, what our gender, our pronouns were, and what we identified as. And I'm like, oh, hey, I'm Pat, you know, I'm a cisgendered man, he, him. I generally identify as a slut, to be honest. And the guy's like, hold on. I have to stop you there. That language might be triggering for people here. And I'm like, what? And he's like, no, that language, you're using the word slut. And I'm like, motherfucker, I'm self-identifying here, and you just minimized who I was because you figured because I'm a he, him, and that because I'm a man identifying as this, that you can shame me for that? That's the biggest fucking hypocrisy I've ever seen in the kink community. And he just like, I'm like, why can she say that she identifies as a slut? But as soon as I say that I identify as a slut, and I'm trying to own this because, like, you know, I've had a lot of like hard-learned experiences growing up being hypersexual. Well, that's part of who I am. So this is what I identify for this workshop, and you fucking shame me for it, you motherfucker. That was a real... Okay, so this is how the kink scene runs, hey? There's a lot of implicit hypocrisy.
I feel like once all that shit started coming into play, it got a little bit overdone. You know, like, I respect whatever gender anyone wants to be. I respect, you know, whatever you want to identify as, whatever pronouns you want to use. I don't give a fuck about what they use. I don't care because it doesn't matter. If whoever walks up to me, a human being walks up to me, I'm going to react the exact same way no matter what human being it is. And I'm going to say, hello. Or if they're introducing themselves, I'm going to introduce myself back. I don't give a fuck who anybody is. And I really feel like once this came into play, it became overwhelming how, like, they're like, let's put this box in front of you, and then you have to fit in this box, and you actually even have to say your pronouns now to be respectful to the other people, so the other people in this fucking box don't get offended.
So is that like safety zone or identity politics or intersectional oppression? What do you think that feeds in?
I
PC
honestly,
culture?
rule people who want rules, you know. And if you listen to my episode, Sir Scott said it perfectly. You know, he was like, everybody, he's so wise and so entertaining to listen to. You know, he literally just like nailed it right on the head that everybody was trying to put him in a fucking box. And everybody just has rules, which is why he doesn't go to anything anymore, because the rules were fucking ridiculous, because everything that we do in like a BDSM or whether it's like fucking leather, whatever it is, you're already breaking out of a fucking normal vanilla box.
Well, yeah, you're stepping into taboo.
Right? And then all of a sudden the taboo people are like, but we have to keep you in this box now, and you have to follow these guidelines.
You can't use this language. You can't wear this outfit. You can't do this activity here. Because we're trying to sanitize it for the brand new people that aren't comfortable with
We don't want to scare the newbies. I'm like, motherfucker, that's fucked.
Well, I remember once upon a time when I got into the kink community and started meeting people, it was a safe space for people that wanted to play with their shadow Jungian side.
Yeah.
Like, I've got these things in me that I need to express in the most ethically safe environment I can, a laboratory environment. Now, this is our safe space to be politically incorrect, but everybody here is consenting to it. And if anybody non-consents, they can leave, or, you know, if you're a bad guy, we usher you out, right? Yeah. If you don't want to respect consent. And that was our safe space. Yeah. But then after, I don't know, there's this weird element of political correctness and, like, I don't know, safety feeler, helicopter parent type people that come in and say, well, you know, you make these new people uncomfortable. You shouldn't use that word. You shouldn't be able to wear that outfit. You shouldn't do that activity in front of people that can't handle it. And Sir Scott was the guy who basically said, if you can't climatize here, we don't offer air conditioning. You know, go away until you're ready to come here, because kink can be therapeutic if you do it with somebody you trust and who cares about you, but it's not a replacement for therapy. So if you're dragging all of these traumas in and you can't witness this stuff without becoming triggered, this is not the place for you.
Go to therapy. Go
to therapy first, work through your stuff, and come back here when you're ready to work through some stuff here. Because, like, I don't know, and I know this isn't popular in the kink community. I don't know anybody who came here because they haven't been traumatized. There's some newbies, and maybe that's the big deal. Once upon a time, this is a place for people to work through their stuff in, like, their shadow, because they have that in them. And what ended up happening is you have a lot of mainstream people that just want a little slap and tickle.
Yeah.
They want to, like, basically spice up their vanilla sex life. And then they run into people that are really working with their demons.
Yeah.
And they say, woo, that's too heavy for me. I saw something that made me uncomfortable, and I think they need to stop what they're doing. That's their fucking safe space, motherfucker. Who are you to roll into their safe space and say, you need to stop what you're doing when nobody's actually getting hurt there?
Legit. I was negotiating a scene, a rape scene, a real rape scene.
So for consensual non-consent.
Yes.
CNC.
Yes.
You need to explain that right off the bat.
Yes. So I wanted to do this. I wanted the thing to happen, and so we were negotiating that. It was in a public dungeon.
And you wanted to experience that energy, and you pre-negotiated
Yes.
so you can flow with that when it's actually go time.
And so when it actually was about to be started, right away, the dungeon masters, or whatever they want to call.
Monitors. That's a gender-neutral term.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry. The monitors came and they were like, this scene needs to stop. It's triggering people in our dungeon. And I was like, I understand that it is a very sensitive topic.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people probably have had this happen to them, including me.
Well, did you have safe words in place?
Yeah. Did I negotiate and give my consent? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I say where my boundaries were? Yeah.
That being said, there's a huge world where it's a public events, public, witnessing.
But that was the reason why I wanted to do it in public, because there was people around, and that gives it its own energy of people staring at you, right?
So Sir Scott is an old school leatherman, and he comes from an environment where everything goes, and if you can't handle the temperature of the water, get the fuck out. Mm-hmm. He's the one who mentioned to me, he's like, you know what, if somebody goes into a dungeon and they see fisting happening, and they can't handle it, maybe this isn't the place for you. Or I'm of the opinion you need to have a paddling pool environment where it's for the kids. Then you've got an intermediate where it's like you can be naked, and then you go to the fisting parties where stuff like heavy stuff is going on. Where like you're getting to, like you said, I want to do scalpel play or suturing play.
Yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily think. I think there should. I am a gatekeeper. I will say it right off the bat. There should be a level that people have to go through of progressively intense scenes before they're allowed to get to a certain level. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is a lot of the paddling pool crew saying there shouldn't be a deep end here.
Or even the paddling pool crew running the fucking show.
That's super valid. And then they make this thing that was actually taboo. That doesn't exist. We don't do that here. Where do they get pushed back into the shadows?
Exactly.
The realm of monsters, where they don't have an avenue to experiment with this stuff. Where does the sadist or the person that has a very heavy sadistic streak, where does that person have an ethical avenue to express that, if not in this community?
Right.
Where does the masochist, who's got a healthy masochistic streak, have an ethical, safe avenue to express that, if not in this community? They'll go to the local biker bar and look for the scary dude who's got scars all over him, who's like just belligerent, and say, you've got the energy I want to engage in, and end up beaten, abused, potentially dead.
And dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about even having the DMs there, is the fact that if I read, then that shit stops.
Okay, what's red?
Oh, red means stop.
We usually use
Right fucking now.
There's a light color. Green means everything's okay. Yellow means you need to stop and check in for a second, just slow it down or back off. And red means this scene is done. All systems fail. We're take me down. Let me go. We're gonna have to debrief right now about what went wrong.
Yes.
So if you red light,
that means everything stops. Mm-hmm. Everything.
And if somebody disregards a red light, they are officially in our community
dangerous
a consent violator.
Yes.
Yes. Well, dangerous and out. If accidents happen,
yes.
But there's that community. That's the importance of a community, and I think people kind of forget about that because random isolated players are a slippery slope towards danger. Right? And a community should be the checks and balances. Is this person reputable? Is this person not reputable? Is this bottom reliable? Will they set limits? Or will this bottom say, I've got no limits, and then freak out when a limit is crossed that they just refuse to admit, right?
It's so true. I feel like people genuinely need a basic understanding of what's fucking happening. Like, even, it's kind of funny because when I was first introduced to my first dungeon, there was a person that was kind of mentoring me that I met at like the first event that I ever went to that introduced me to kink. That person was like, be careful, the things you see at a dungeon you might not want to see, and they're really intense, and the energy's really crazy.
They could just be a slap and tickle party.
Yeah, but he did give me that warning, and I was like, well, I'm not fucking scared. Like, I've seen some fucked up shit in my life, like real fucked up shit, and I'm like, I can handle this. And it was so overstimulating when I first got there.
Well, you get a dopamine rush for sure, just
Right?
going into those spaces.
Oh,
like,
and the
what?
screams and the but you know, like it's a fabulous place to even just watch, you know, like, and just see what's happening and learning. And you know, I don't know, I think there's definitely some tickle parties happening.
Well, I think that's a standard because just like Miami Ink and all these TV shows introduce the vanilla public to the underground world of tattooing, and you
Yes.
suddenly have like a whole bunch of people that just want get their big toe wet in the tattoo underground community. I think 50 Shades of Grey, they kind of play with this, and they brought a whole bunch of vanilla people that just want to spice up their vanilla sex life with a
Yes.
little bit of bondage or a little like dog leash kind of lead around that meet real deep players. And when they meet a deep established player, they're like, you are too intense for me, and I interpret that as being dangerous, and you shouldn't be allowed to do it.
You know what I suggest to people who really wanted to spice up their sex life? Go to a fucking swingers club.
Okay, let's talk about that for a
That's
second.
fluffy.
Because my partner and I, we've been invited to do what I call our tribe meets your tribe. And we were doing the BDSM presentations at swingers events, like hotel takeovers. We would run the BDSM room, show people safe play and like stuff like that. And I found, because you come from more of a swinging background before you got to kink, right?
No, it was pretty much straight into kink.
Oh, okay. Because I found in the swing community, they are polar opposite attitudes.
Totally.
We generally do things sober, not under the influence.
Yes.
And my experience is a lot of these people just get shit-faced and smash into each other so they don't have to really remember what happened the night before,
I
right?
think that's kind of bad. Like,
Not to disparage anybody who's involved with the swinging community, but like
Right?
that was my experience. I asked these people, I'm like, so what do you guys do for talking about STIs in advance, like disclosure, negotiation? And they're like, what? We wear condoms. I'm like, you don't even talk about this stuff? And they're like, no, we don't talk about that. That ruins the mood.
Or like if people like you don't understand the risk of the fact that even if you just have oral sex, you can still get STDs.
Well, lots, you know?
Right?
Yeah.
And so that is not spoken about.
No,
Like,
you don't want to
in
ruin the
swinger
mood. And I'm
right?
like, you need to ruin the mood. Like, Jesus Christ, I've been getting cold sores since I was like 2 years old. You need to fucking know about that, you know?
Yes,
And
risk
that's-
aware.
Yeah, that's like on the table. The first date I have or first time I meet with somebody, I'm like, okay, so I'm poly or I'm going to have multiple partners eventually. This is, and now I'm in a long-term relationship and I do kink. You know, so these are my specific things that I like to do. Oh, and this happens.
Yeah.
Now, if any of those are a deal breaker, this is your chance to run the fuck away
Yeah.
because it's not going to change. None of those
Yeah.
things are going to be off the table anytime soon. So,
Like if you can't handle the fact that we share lipstick or lip trap, then why are you here?
Yeah,
Because I can't
exactly.
eat your pussy.
well,
Or suck your dick.
Yeah, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's like, if I engage with you and you know that I do sensation play and we're negotiating, you say, I want to play with you. Cool, so we're doing this play. I get you all tied up and all of a sudden I spank your bottom. Was your consent violated because we didn't negotiate every minutia of what was going to happen during that scene?
No.
Now, that was a bad negotiation. Maybe I should have
Was.
put it on the play or put it
Yes.
on the table and said, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. But do you not trust this individual enough to say, and if you don't trust them, why are you playing with them?
And in that moment, because I mean, realistically, it shouldn't be like the first time you hit someone. It shouldn't be like super fucking hard, right?
Maybe we agree to disagree on something.
But you know, like sometimes some people warm people up and it's nicer.
Some people are considerate
But
too.
that's when you
like,
have to know the fact. Like if you don't know how to negotiate, then you should tell people when you don't like something.
Yeah.
Use your fucking words.
My name's Pat. Ask around. I'm a motherfucker. Nice to meet you. All right.
Right?
So.
Like the second that I met you, I knew the type of play because the first time I laid eyes on you,
I give a vibe, do I?
no, the first time I laid eyes on you, you were in the middle of a scene.
Oh, yeah.
So the very first second
So
I
there's
met
no
you,
surprises.
I was like, that's a mean motherfucker.
I can be. I got that moment in me. And I think, it's very important to recognize that, like, it took me a long time to come to grips with owning that I have a sadistic streak in me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whether it's just teasing people or cracking jokes or actually allowing myself to be physically mean to somebody who wants somebody to be mean to them. Mm-hmm. That was part of me. I needed to do that in order to find where that came from, where it was rooted in, and how much of that I needed to get out of me. Now, I think there's a lot of people that don't do that personal investigation. And they just go to the bar, get shit-faced, and get in a fight. Or, you know, they just live their lives victimizing people and calling people down and cracking jokes on people non-consensually, being bullies, as opposed to going to a safe space and saying, well, what is it in me that needs to victimize somebody?
Or they end up users because, you know, they're trying to find an escape from that feeling that they have to do those things, and they feel like they're ethically immoral.
That goes back to that running away from your discomfort.
Totally.
You know? And jealousy is a big one with that, where it's like, I see so many people that instead of just owning the fact that, like, wow, this thing makes me feel insecure and inadequate, and I'd like to talk to you about my feelings of insecurity and inadequacy, they say, you did something wrong to me. Mm-hmm. Because they're not internalizing their own stuff. They're projecting their own stuff on your behavior.
Totally.
Yeah, and that one really kills me, because when you get into the poly, or you get into kink, or you get into any of that stuff, ideally, if you're not getting shit-faced and smashing into people, you need to unpack what's actually happening with you. And
Absolutely.
if you can't do that, this is not the place for you.
Yeah. You know, when I first got together with my fiance, you know, and he was playing and doing other things with other people, at first I was really nervous. You know, like, I was like, I just found you. Like, and you fit so well, like a fucking puzzle piece with my life. And, like,
I can't relate to that with my partner at all.
I know.
We're so different.
No,
and like,
yeah, they're so
okay.
cute too. But, you know, I just got you, and now you want to go and play with other people. My insecurity that boils up is, are you gonna fucking leave me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you gonna run away now and go away? And, like, you know, and of course everyone...
Find somebody better, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And then I didn't value enough of myself, or I didn't think I was pretty enough, or whatever it may be, right? And that doesn't fucking matter. If you work through that shit and you gain self-confidence and you recognize that you can trust your fucking partner, because if you can't, what kind of fucking relationship do you have? And, you know, that jealousy goes away. And then you see your partner enjoying themselves, having a good time, and you're like, if you're sexual like I am, then fuck yeah, I like seeing my partner get off. Does that happen to be in someone else sometimes? Why not?
The poly community put a new word on the table, which is actually, in my opinion, one of the most accurate representation of what love actually is. And the word is compersion. And compersion is deriving pleasure and joy from watching your partner derive pleasure and joy. You get happy from watching other people be happy. And it started in the poly community where if you really love somebody, you are happy when they're happy. And you do anything that you can to make them happy. Now, you could carry this over to a family dynamic where I'm happy when my kid is running around happy as hell. Yeah. That makes me happy if I can provide my child with a circumstance like a birthday party, when it's the best birthday party that they've ever had, and they're all like joyous and running around. That's compersion. You're feeling happiness from your partner or from somebody else getting happiness. Now, in a relationship, wouldn't you want to be in a relationship where your partner is as happy as possible? Now, how can you be in a loving relationship where you keep your partner like a bird in a cage with a lock, and this cage is all of your implicit expectations on how they need to behave to maintain your emotional boundaries?
I legit saw the best meme the other day, and it was like, this ring right here is not a nerve block to my genitals.
Oh, or your heart, or
right?
your brain, or any part of your life.
100%.
Yeah.
People just get put in these cages, and they're like, that way you're safe. You're never gonna be able to leave me, because if you're in this cage, that means I can control you. I can control that you're in this cage. And then if you look around trying to be free and trying to find an escape route, I'll keep you in this cage.
Mm-hmm. Well, because that's how they look at it. That you're looking for an escape. And that really gets to me, where like so many people get focused on this whole like physical thing. You know what I mean? You like them more than me. No, I have a relationship with them, and that relationship is this. And the relationship I have with you is this. And the relationship I have with the waitress at the fucking restaurant is this. Yeah. And all of those are individual interactions between two individuals, and you can have different interactions between different individuals, and you can get benefit out of each, and no two are the same. The relationship I have with the guys I go shooting is a type of relationship, and the relationship I have with my partner is another type of relationship. Now, what if all of a sudden my partner says, I don't like what you do with those guys when you go shooting, I'm jealous of that type of relationship? Okay, then come shooting. You know, put on like the muddy clothes. Let's go climb around in the bushes. And well, I don't want to do that either. well, then why can't I go find that relationship over here? That you could carry it over to a sexual connotation where it's like, what if I really like giving head, but my partner really doesn't like getting head? Should I just go without that thing I like or should I have the right and freedom to say, hey, I don't like doing it. You like that thing? Go find somebody who likes it. You come back here because what we have is our long-term established deal.
Exactly. You know, and like I think I'm a little bit biased, maybe because I don't really understand monogamy in a certain light, because ever since I was very young, like I remember being like 8 years old, hanging out in the trailer park, you know, dating this like guy that had 10 girlfriends, and
He's pimping.
yeah, he was, and he was the hottest guy
Probably
on the block,
literally.
right? And so then there was
Do
all
you like
of
my
us,
girlfriend?
and then we were all cuddling in this bed. You know, I was 8 fucking years old. I had 2 boyfriends. They were best friends.
But there's other stuff that goes along with being hypersexual at a young age.
Yes,
you know,
yes,
like,
of course.
So, and that's the same thing with me. And this isn't to say that there's anything wrong with 2 people that monogamy really works for. That's another element. I don't want to say everybody needs to be poly, everybody needs to do kink, everybody needs to open their relationship. These are all just options, and who's to say one model is the only one?
Absolutely. Like, what if there is a genuinely monogamous person that has miraculously found a person that checks every single thing off their list in every aspect of life, in every way possible?
Yes, I'm
I
sure
don't think
they're
it's
out there.
true.
They're out there somewhere. you
Yes,
know?
yes.
Just like I'm sure there's monks that can levitate by the willpower of their brain.
Yes,
But
totally.
I haven't met them.
100%. But, you know,
without sacrificing some element of themselves to get that.
yes, and so there is, you know, there's people out there like that, I'm sure.
When I met my partner and she introduced me to the concept of compersion, of wanting the other person to be happy, and allowed me to investigate that side of me without judgment, without control, the longer I was allowed to be free enough to investigate that in our relationship, and knowing I had a safe place to come back to that was firm and established and without jealousy, the more I was just wanting to be there more. I became monogamish, right? The more freedom I was given, which is very interesting, as opposed to somebody saying, you aren't allowed to do anything. And I'm like, who the fuck are you to be putting these chains on me? Get them the fuck off of me. I'm a free individual. You can't control me. As opposed to say, go do whatever you want. I'm giving you as long a leash as you need. You know, there's some parameters, as long as you don't come home any unhealthier than you left. You
Right.
know? These are, and you respect those parameters, then that's cool. Now, if I came home with some random virus and then she's like, well, guess what? We have to negotiate and talk, and you know what? You betrayed my trust and this relationship's over because you betrayed my trust. Well, that stuff's valid. That stuff's super valid. But the longer I'm in that dynamic, the more monogamous I am.
It's fascinating because I'm the exact same fucking way. It's crazy because you know what? Like, I used to explore, and I was very open, and I was fucking everyone, but I wasn't really coming with a lot of people, you know? Like, so, and to
We're
me...
just going to put this on the table. All right.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Me
I
and my
talk about
orgasms.
sex. And penis and vaginas. It's okay. We can say the words. You know, like, I wasn't having a lot of orgasms with a lot of people. And so I was, like, literally searching through the seas of all these people, women, men, trans, whatever, you know, and I was doing everything I could to just explore, to try to make these things work good, right? And so when I finally found someone, and I don't know if it was connection or their, you know, penis just magically fit in my pussy.
Everything fit right.
It fit. And so I was like, oh, this is it. I'm here. This is good.
There's certain conditions that need to be clicked when you meet that individual.
Yes. And so there was so many things on my checklist. Everything was good. But, you know, as time goes on, I'm still free to do whatever I want. But I'm like, why am I going and having sex with a bunch of people that aren't really connecting with me, that aren't very good in bed? I end up having bad times. You know, like, not saying that's everyone.
Why am I sacrificing myself for them?
Yeah.
As opposed to finding what works for me?
Yeah. And then, like I could just go home and have an orgasm. You know, like, why am I giving this to you?
There's this,
And I'm not saying, like, anyone in particular. But
there's a documentary called Beyond Vanilla, if you can find it. It's really good, and they interview, and it's coming from like the gay fetish kind of thing, but they interview this like porn actor, and he's like, life is too short to deny what makes your dick hard. And your mileage may vary depending on your parts, but like you can go through your life denying who you are, or you can just say, this is who I actually am, this is actually what rocks my boat, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. But it's also, you owe yourself the opportunity to go out there and say, well, does this do it for me? And find out what does and doesn't. And you come to the point of view after a while saying, this does work for me and this doesn't work for me. But at least it's an educated decision. As opposed to, fuck that, my ego boundaries say I don't do that thing.
yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Did you ever give it a chance? Did you ever find out? No, fuck that. I don't want to do that. Well, why? Because that's what your dad told you? Or that's what your mom told you? Or
Yeah.
that's what society told you? Or your bros expect of you? Like,
Right?
I don't know.
Who's telling you you're doing it wrong? So I legit, like, I have these check boxes that everything is awesome and I'm super happy. And I need to, like, so I've changed my view and I'm like, I'm gonna dip into the monogamy pool, I think, a little bit. And so, like, I'm still open, I still have fun, I still go and do the things, but I'm way more selective than I used to be.
What was very interesting when I learned that you were getting engaged. And I like, and in my mind, I'm like, so to me, the structure of marriage was very much linked with monogamy and all of those societal structures that surround the institution of marriage. And I really was wondering how you guys are negotiating this structure if you are both poly. And what that looks like, you know?
See, but this is where people get tripped up because they think there's going to be a difference once we sign a piece of paper. There isn't.
Yeah.
We are the same humans that walked
Then
into
why
this
sign
marriage.
the piece of paper?
See, that's whether or not you believe in marriage. That's a whole other concept. But I believe that I am committing to him, like I always have been, and it's a celebration of our love. Whether or not we're signing a piece of paper, we don't even have to be legally. However, I want to be legally married because I want to get rid of my last name.
Okay.
And,
yeah.
you know, like I want to get, that's a chapter I get to close.
Well, we watched that little bit on hand fasting, right? Which was
Yeah.
a ceremony of marriage where there's like either ribbons or ropes, and they're put over two holding hands, and one is one family, the other's the other family, and then there's the new family that's coming about from this union, right? And the
Yeah.
knot that's tying the knot, is part of that ritual. And I think, you know, even traditionally in the old school esoteric worlds, this is the male principle and the female principle now joining together in one greater principle, which is the ceremony of marriage.
Yes.
Now, I think colonialism, that patriarchal overarching idea of to serve and obey till death do us part, like that is what marriage represented to me. And I've seen
Yeah.
nothing but failed experiments. You know what I mean? Not nothing, but the people that are long term in those monogamous marriage structures, and other people that'll go around like, oh my god, that person's married, how can they act like that? Like
Yeah.
that keeping up with the Joneses stuff really marred the entire thing for me, you know, because I'm of the opinion that I don't believe in marriage, you know, but it's mostly having to do with other people's expectations of what marriage represents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But who fucking cares? Who
Yeah.
fucking
Well,
cares?
that's me unpacking, I guess. I'll have to
Yeah.
unpack like the societal expectations and how they
Because
affect me.
how much shit do you do that are not a societal expectation? 100% of you, almost.
I'm up there.
You're not a typical, like when you say cisgendered slut, you know, it's out of, you know, the box, the little box.
Is it? Or am I just putting words on it that almost all my dude friends just haven't figured out the words to explain what they're doing now? Or maybe they just haven't unpacked it and said, like, this is who and what I am, and this is how I fit into the new model. Because I know a lot of other cisgendered sluts that are non-monogamous that really haven't just found the words to explain how to ethically do what they're doing. And they would rather just be, well, I got a girlfriend and 3 on the side, you know? And, and that's really weird. Because I think I guess maybe that's my idea of trying to do this stuff as ethically as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, I feel like that's what I'm doing in my marriage. I'm doing it as ethically as possible.
Well, kink, how do we investigate our shadow side, our monstrous side, you know, that taboo side as ethically as possible?
Yes.
You know, where nobody's being victimized, there's no non-consent going on. Well, I go to this laboratory experiment where there's like escape hatches. I'm pulling this one, let me out. I'm pulling this one, let me out.
Yeah.
And or hey, if somebody wants me to take them to a place that's way heavier than I'm ready to go, I can say, you know what, I'm going to yellow on that, or I'm going to red on this scene. You're wanting me to do stuff that I may not be able to put back together. you
Yeah,
know?
use your fucking words. Like, a lot of people just kind of like end up like, I feel like it's that victimized brain. You know, the victim brain usually often goes inward, doesn't talk, and is like, oh my god, I'm, you know, that's
Internalize.
exactly. And then they create this big chaotic mess for themselves. But if you don't do that, you know, like, if you're just like, if you just use your words and be like, I'm feeling this right now, I need to walk out of this room right now. If I'm like, I don't want to do this right now, don't put your dick in me right now. Like, don't
Hit me one more time.
exactly.
You know? Well, you know what? And I think in the kink community makes dudes unpack their male ego and implicit expectations where they have to listen.
Yeah.
You are not allowed to not listen.
Yep.
You are not allowed to go in saying, I'm going to do whatever I want. And it is a bit of a danger when you're assuming the authority role where you are the doer of the things to the person that wants to be helpless, where you get to this, I can do whatever I want. I am a god form. And that's a potentially dangerous space to go if you aren't willing to put those checks and balances that say, okay, I got the cue. I'm not allowed to be that guy anymore. Back to me. Back to normal, rational, compassionate individual.
Yeah.
When just a minute ago, I was allowed to be the, I don't give a shit. You're taking it whether you like it or not. Whatever I want to do, you know?
Yeah.
And those two, being able to shift gears like that, I think it's important.
You know, it's even in vanilla world, like when I was hooking up with random dudes, you know, like guys would just like try to put it in my butt all the fucking time. And the second they'd even try to go in there, I'm like, no, right?
Scene over.
Like, that's like literally, that's exactly what you have to think about. Like, when you're in the middle of a scene, whether you're a fucking slave or not, you know, just use your like, no, like,
Or on the movie set. Movie set. We're adopting a role for this period of time that everybody's consenting to be in part of this movie.
Yeah.
At any time, I can say, that's the scene. We're not doing it anymore.
100%.
Or hold the camera. I got to redo that line. We got to check in for a second. Reroll. We're back on. You know?
And this is the problem with playing with strangers, because people all of a sudden are saying that you are a consent violator because, you know, 10 hours after the scene, you felt traumatized.
Well, you had some buyer's remorse. You had some regret about something. There's a new element that's coming up in the kink community, well, and also the vanilla community, that I have a huge issue with, and it's retroactive withdrawal of consent.
Yes.
Let me say that again. Retroactive withdrawal of consent. I'm taking back my consent after something is done.
Which is fucking crazy.
I think so. Like, if
There's
I'm
no
checking
return
in,
policy on sex.
right? If I'm checking in every step of the way, and I'm like, is this cool? Is this cool? Is this cool? And you're not saying no, you know, everything's hunky dory, and then you get buyer's remorse 3 days after when you're doing this drop and you see a bruise form or something like that. Well, you were cool at the time, but while you cheated on your boyfriend.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden you got some regret. You can go back and say, you know what? I felt my consent was violated and ruined this guy's fucking life.
Right.
So that's a bit of an issue. And I get it, because there are dudes out there that are ruining girls' lives by violating consent.
Absolutely.
But you can't flip the dynamic on the opposite and now victimize dudes, because guess what? They won't engage with you anymore. They won't want anything to do with you anymore because you're a loose cannon and a dangerous player.
Yeah.
And I think the kink community, if people were involved with it, would see all of the stuff that's happening in vanilla world happening, and we've already worked through it. We
Yeah.
know the ins and outs. We know you're a dangerous person to engage with. And it doesn't matter if you're on the top or you're on the bottom. Fuck you. I'm not going near you.
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
What does informed consent look like to you?
Well, it's a loaded question, kind of.
Yeah, because
You
people
know.
say that they want informed consent before they enter into a negotiation.
Well, you know, it's kind of, well, it's the reason why I overthink a little bit, but if I'm to simplify it, it's the fact that I have this list of education. So if you told me that we were going to do like a scene and we were negotiating, then you'd be like, this is the kind of avenue we're going to go down. Like, this
Is there
is
going
the
to be
kind of
bondage? Is there going to be
things.
pain? Is there going to be sex? Is there going to be,
Totally.
you know?
Very simplistic things, but that's informed consent because I know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you are consenting to and negotiating with the fact that you might not know every detail of what happens, that is something to include so you have informed consent. Use your fucking words. If you don't like it, I'll stop. And that's what I tell all of my bottoms that I play with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if you don't like something that I'm doing, say so. Like, I will stop.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's something that's just like slightly irritating you, because I don't want to be the fucking labeled as a consent violator.
Well, if you've been playing with one individual exclusively, or not exclusively, but one consistently for, let's say, 5 years, it gets to a point where you don't need to negotiate anymore.
Yeah, because
and you
know.
hardly even use safe words anymore,
Yeah.
because you know their limits, you know their triggers, you know what's good, you know what's on the table, and you know what's off the table.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen people say you play dangerously with your partner, you hit them super hard, and I'm like, do you know what we talk about? Like, for the drive to this party? You know, we've already negotiated everything, and to you it looks horrible. Or like, whap, 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 and I pull the hair and I like whisper something in the ear and whap, whap, whap. They don't even know when I'm pulling that hair and whispering in the ear. I'm like, how was that? How many more? And she's like, I need 3 more. I'm like, all right, oh, horrible dom. And I'm like, where are you at? You know, like that kind of thing. But they don't see that side of it, and they're like, then they go up to my bottom and like, I can't believe you endured that. Did you consent to that?
Oh my god.
There was ongoing consent through that whole scene. Who the
Right.
fuck are you to come up and start like interjecting your little moral values into our stuff?
Absolutely.
Like, do you think we'd be playing like that in public? If not, but then again, there are people that would. There are maniacs out there.
It's
So
true, but I feel like, and you know, you should never assume an advanced player is a safe player either. You know, like some people fuck up. Not everybody's perfect all the time, and people do shit that they shouldn't, or whatever. You know, like not everybody's an angel all the time, right? But like, I always feel like there should be some kind of like know your shit before you're accusing people of shit.
how much is personal responsibility involved in knowing who you're engaging with, right? I think that's a huge part that's getting a bad rep in the kink community when you say, I want to play with people that are personally responsible.
Yeah.
You know, because if I engage with you and something kind of goes sideways and I haven't asked if that's something you're into and I didn't safe word and I didn't, you know, whatever, or if you've got a bad reputation and the only thing that you tell me is about all the horrible relationships you've been in and all the people that have violated your consent and oh, you're such a victim and I still want to engage with you, chances are I'm going to be the next guy on the chopping block, right?
100%.
So that's my personal responsibility that I threw out the window. I put my dick in crazy, that's my fucking deal. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, if you allow crazy to put their dick in you, you know, that's where's your personal responsibility when it comes to this stuff, right?
Like, and exactly, like, are you negotiating as a bottom or as a top properly? Like, you know, if I know that I'm not huge into pain play, you bet your ass, especially if I know they're a sadist, you know, I'm gonna be like, I don't really like pain that much. Yeah. I mean,
What if
can't
they're a
make
real
that.
dominant and they say, but I do?
Well, then that means I'm not equipped to play with that person.
That's cool. And you withdraw consent. And if I don't
Yes.
respect that consent, I'm a fucking dom.
Right.
I'm a consent violator.
Exactly.
Now, if in the middle of a scene, let's say you get smacked on the butt, you turn around, I'm not into that, and I do it again, that makes me a bad dom. If I smack your butt and you say I'm not into that, and I say, okay, it won't happen again, that's listening to those boundaries. Did I violate your
Yeah.
consent because I didn't
Nope.
know that limit?
Nope.
No, I didn't. You know, and I think this is a big confusion because I've engaged with people and there was a bit of pain and they say, I didn't consent to that. No, we didn't negotiate it, but I stopped it as soon as you said, well, I think that's an issue. Well, then we should red light and debrief.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that should be the, like, you know, the conversation has started, and that should be where, like, that's it. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden someone is fucking traumatized.
Or you should hit the internet and tell everybody how dangerous a player this individual is. Because
And I also hate the fucking fact that everyone uses the trauma word. Like, I'm triggered. I'm like, motherfucker, I have more traumas in my life than you could ever shake a stick at. Okay.
I've been hospitalized because of PTSD triggers.
Right?
Don't tell me you're offended by a word, you know, and that's the thing. And if you are so offended by a word that you're going to have a PTSD trigger, get into therapy and get out of kink.
Yes.
Get off the internet. Don't be on social media.
Yes.
Just be like,
Seriously.
if you're going to get triggered by the word rape, you know, shit, fuck, Satan, death, sex, drug, rape, any of that stuff triggers you,
Yeah.
then fucking go home, go get therapy. Don't come out in public until you are sufficiently prepared to deal with the real life.
Because this shit happens here. And we know that. You should know that going into a fucking BDSM dungeon, that some fucking weird shit's probably gonna happen there, right?
Well, even
Like-
in real life. You know, I just saw something that somebody said, what was it? Oh, I even forget what the word was. It was a trigger warning on something mundane. And it was on like Facebook. Mundane trigger warning. I'm like, the fact that we're living that in an era where something so mundane needs a trigger warning says all I need to know about the people that are posting and the people that are reading these posts.
Yep.
Now, as somebody who's got legitimate trauma, legitimate PTSD, that when I get triggered, I go psychotic, I need hospitalization, and I've experienced that stuff. Your triggers are not real triggers. Being offended is not a fucking trigger.
Absolutely.
Quit confusing the two fucking things.
Yeah.
And you know what? Real players in the deeper pools in the kink community know their triggers. They enter in with their triggers. They say, these are my triggers. You're going to have to be careful if you go near this area. You can't use this word. You can't use this tool. You can't touch this area of my body. And if you do, you need to be aware of what might happen.
Yeah.
That's informed consent.
Absolutely.
You know, and a responsible other player will say, okay, thank you for that information. I'm going to be very careful. And if we go there, it's going to be with compassion and gentleness and all of that.
Yeah.
Now, people don't think about that when they think about kink. They just think about pulling hair, slapping it, shoving it wherever, and that stuff doesn't come into play.
Let me use an ice cube on your body.
But that's okay too. But there's some people that could say that's a trigger for me.
Like, what if they got frostbite before
Or
in their
what
life?
if their parents, made them stay in a doghouse overnight and they were like from a horrible and they got frozen? Like, yeah, ice cubes could be a real fucking trigger, but
Right?
you need to say that right off the bat. And you're not allowed to say, this whole restaurant can't have ice makers because I am triggered by them.
Or like, people who are like allergic to nuts, or like say you just like have like almonds and you're putting them all over their body and you're like licking it off. Almonds of all things. I could have used chocolate sauce, but almonds. Like, and then they're like, oh, I'm anaphylactic. That's fucking how you do consent.
Well, should the dungeon no longer allow peanuts because there's an anaphylactic person
Oh
that
my
might show up?
God.
Or is it the anaphylactic individuals that is supposed to say, I can't go there because there might be peanuts and
Yeah.
I'll die if I come in
Maybe I should bring an
contact with it?
EpiPen.
Yes. Does your pasture need to be cleared of bees before I go there? Because I could die if I get bitten by one? Or is it my responsibility to know that I will die if I get bit by a bee or stung by a bee and I won't go to that environment?
And it's so
fuck
true.
me.
And maybe we're minimizing the reality of what happens in a dungeon, but rape is usually quite triggering for people. Even in the BDSM scene, people get very sensitive about it. But
Can I give you a scenario?
yeah, go for it.
We used to do a bi-weekly rope night. Rope jam, you bring your rope, we tie you up, we show you some different ties, consensual relationships, blah, blah, blah. It was in our space, the Bulba Studio, where we teach this stuff. We used to do large groups, now we do more individual play. Plug. So this young woman comes down and she doesn't want to be involved. She literally wants to sit in the corner doing macrame and knitting. And we're like, well, there's people here that do tying or people here that want to be tied. If you want to learn, we've got books. We've got like people that are senior, So whatever. The night went on and two bottoms wanted to get tied up together. And we put a magic or a violet wand, which is an electroplay device, on a chain between them. And they were jumping around because one would get shocked and pull the other one in. The other one would get shocked. And everybody laughed and had a great old time.
Yeah.
The end of the night, everybody goes home. The internet happens. This little knitting girl that didn't want to be participating in anything went and wrote how much of an unsafe space we operated because she was triggered watching this. She didn't consent to see this scene go down, and like we operated an unsafe space and we violated her consent and we should not being able to open. I started getting emails from people saying you need to put all the disclaimers on your studio that say that people might witness things that are triggering. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing any of that. Fuck it. You can't see this stuff, don't come. And that was the beginning of me being considered to be too much of an asshole to be on the floating entry level for the kink community.
Yes.
Like, if you can't witness something like that, what are you going to do when you really get into an SM space?
Yeah.
Because this is just beginning level, giggle, slap, tickle. Like, we're having
Ha-has.
fun here. Nobody's
Yeah.
really screaming, no, stop.
Yeah.
And the top is waiting to hear a safe word. Because if you see that, oh my God, if you got that many triggers, don't be here. And I
Yeah.
think in some ways the kink community, it's a magnet for people with damage.
Yeah.
And they figured this is where I belong. Well, it's only here where you belong if you can handle the stuff that's going on.
You know, there is a difference. Like, I find that there's a very particular type of people that get into kink, and I find that they're very, out of the box, out of the norm, type of people. But, they're not that out of the box, or they're not that out of the norm. Or, if they think that the out of the box people are for them, it doesn't have to be kink. There's out of the box people that fucking play, like, I don't know, what's a safe place? D&D, like they go and they hang out and they play cards.
World of Warcraft, sit in your basement. And
Yeah. Or, like there's other
create
groups.
a Second Life account.
There's a fucking sewing group, like if you feel like
Tai
you're
Chi.
a little out of the box, there's things that you can do, different avenues and communities that you can be a part of. Going into an S&M environment and being like, you hurt my feelings by saying that word.
Yeah.
That's fucked.
Well, the new one is master and slave are too politically incorrect to be using.
Are you fucking shitting me?
People want the kink community. Guy Baldwin just posted about this like 4 days ago. That and I'm pretty sure that's exactly the language that is now with the Black Lives Matter thing. People no longer want master and slave to be used in kink spaces. It's been used in Rome
For decades.
Well, slaves were Roman slaves,
Yeah.
Egyptian slaves. It's not specifically about black slavery,
No.
but the new politically correct contingent within our community says that certain words need to be taken out of our vernacular, and certain outfits, uniform fetishists can no longer wear politically incorrect uniforms because that might be triggering to individuals. And I'm like, you know what? How about we just say you're gonna see triggering shit. If
Yeah.
you're easily triggered, don't come.
Yeah.
At least those are the environments I choose to be in. And if it's too much of a safe environment, I guess that's for you.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. That really blew my mind. And he put it out there. He's like, this is getting ridiculous. And somebody online said, that's the densest thing I've ever heard. I'm like, how do you consider this dense? And then another person chimed in and said, oh, I'm sorry. I think BDSM across the board is rooted in problematic behavior. And I'm like, according to who? According to whose morality is this
think it's a good time.
problematic? Well, the people that are consenting to be there, it's not problematic. It's the opposite. It's cathartic. It's liberating.
empowering.
It's empowering. Now, if you don't find it fun, cathartic, empowering, don't come. If you think it's problematic, don't be there.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I could say hip hop's problematic. They use language I find offensive. They talk about topics I find offensive.
And they
Should
use
I?
the N-word.
Well, N-word, B-word, crime, drugs,
Right.
superficial. Should I go into those communities and tell them that they're problematic and they should probably stop
You're
it?
triggering people.
Fuck me, but they don't see the linking of those two behaviors. It's like the missionaries rolling into the indigenous communities and saying, you know what, how you're living and raising your children, we find it problematic. Here's a residential school. We're fixing your morality.
Yeah,
they don't see that those are the exact same principles. You find this shit problematic and nobody's being hurt here, don't fucking come.
It's like they went to church and expected not to hear about God.
Yep. Well, I saw things, power dynamic. Well, the large element of intersectional politics and gender studies deals with issues of power and dominance. But then they come to a community which is entirely established on exploring issues of power and dominance, and they're triggered and upset by watching power and dominance in action.
Yeah.
But they take the fact intersectional politics has to do with non-consensual power and implicit expectations of power versus us saying we're here to do this on purpose.
Yeah, I like this. This gets me off. Like, this makes me excited. This makes me feel like I'm a badass bitch.
And if you don't want to do it, you wouldn't be there.
Yep.
I think that's one of the biggest fucking confusions. So, you think safe words are always necessary?
Depending on the dynamic. If you've negotiated that you don't, of course, the ultimate safe word that you actually feel like you just kind of need in your back pocket if you're consistently playing with someone, what if something was to go wrong, you're exploring and stuff. I feel like there is some ground for safe words. But I also feel like if you know your partner super well and you guys have played together lots of times and you kind of know where to take them and how far to push them and there's trust built, then I don't think that you need to negotiate every time. I don't think that you need to have valid, I don't think that you need to have this huge communication because you already know, right? Like when you and I,
When we engage.
yeah,
Listen if your no has too much bass in it.
Yeah. I'm really, I like to be pushed. I'm what they call an edge player. I like to be no, I don't like that. But at the same time, I'm but keep going.
So, just for those that aren't familiar, edge play in the kink community is a subjective term for activities or kink that may have an inherent risk of injury and or harm.
Yes.
So fire play, blood play, that kind of stuff, breath play. So that stuff may include, potentially triggering or dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
Now, edge play isn't for newbies. It's not for beginners. It's for people that want to go there and have negotiated that stuff, right?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm very good with my words if there's something that I'm I always, it's kind of one of those people where you're I'll try it out, I'll kind of experience a little bit, but at the end of the day, if I don't like it, I'm going to say so.
And everybody's edges are different.
Yeah.
What might be edgy to one person might not be edgy to another. So I think it's a very subjective term.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true.
So let's talk about people that say the word consensual BDSM. Is there
Wow.
such thing as non-consensual BDSM?
Well, there's consensual non-consent.
Yeah, but it's still consensual.
It is, everything's
Right.
consensual.
I think that's a
It
huge...
should be.
Yes, if it's not consensual, it's not kink.
Yeah,
It's abuse.
it is.
And
100% of the time.
yeah, and pornography. You watch a lot of this stuff, and they pick up some random girl on the side of the road. She's in the back of a van, and she gets used and tossed out.
And choking on his dick like fucking just.
But they don't ever debrief or talk about the negotiations of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's giving these young people that implicit consent. Well, that's how sex is done.
Yeah.
That's how sex is done, and I think
If
that's...
a woman shows any interest, this is what she wants because I want it.
Oh yeah, that's huge. Like they remove the aspect of negotiation, communication, and consent from it, and they just say implicit expectations because I grew up watching Bang Bus or whatever the fuck it is, right?
100%. And it's kind of fucked because women's, I don't know if this is just gender specific to women, but I personally feel I have this obligation to say yes as a woman. Like if I have even a little bit of interest in someone, then my obligation is to say yes because I'm interested. What if
Everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, like if I just like flirting with a person, or if I just like dig their energy and I kind of like them as a friend or whatever, and if that person then wants to have sex, I'm like, fuck, I'm kind of obligated to do that now.
Yeah, because did I lead him on?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to withdraw consent?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kink tells you you're allowed to withdraw at any fucking time.
At any fucking time.
Yeah.
He's about to spurt in you. Fuck no, if you're not into it and you're like, I want to bail out right now.
He's got a rager
Bail
and he's
out.
almost going to put it in, and you're like, you know what? I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
You got that right to make that fucking decision.
Totally.
I think that's a big confusion. There was another thing that I just lost. That's okay. It'll come back to me. Well, it's about negotiation and consent, right? Like when you can withdraw consent. And even as a top, if somebody's like, I really want to fuck you, I really want to do this. Well, sex wasn't on the table.
Yeah.
I negotiated that we could play, maybe some spanking, maybe some bondage. But what about this? I really want to do this. Well, I don't want to do that with you.
Yeah.
So I think people need to recognize that they can withdraw consent at any time safely.
Exactly.
On either side.
And you know what? When I play with bottoms, and I'm in my top energy, my top space, then I'm like, I actually negotiate the fact that I am not doing this for catharsis. I am not, if you want to go there, I'm not the person you want to do this with. I'm doing this for fun, to fuck around, to get that energy, fuck around,
I'm
whatever.
going to be a selfish top and take this from you.
Totally. 100%. I like being selfish pretty much 99% of the time. I love me, but
I'm really into service topping for cathartic use right now. So that's me, right?
Yeah, I don't like doing that for people. And then I also don't like, like the aftercare bit where I have someone in a puddle on the floor crying. I mean, if it accidentally happens, this is what I set up. If you want someone for aftercare and you think that this might go down an avenue you don't think it should go or whatever, have someone present with you that's willing to take care of you.
So in cathartic energy play, and this is crossing the line towards more shamanic ritual kind of stuff. You take somebody past their comfort zones. You break them down. You take them to that zone where they are a puddle and a mess, but then you're obligated to also bring them back from that place.
It's true.
Now, when I do heavy play, part of that negotiation is I'll never take you far enough that I can't put you back together.
Yeah.
And that could be physically, if you don't ask me to cut you if I can't stitch you up, or anything like that. If I'm not comfortable in this area, I won't go there, and I'm going to withdraw my consent, or I won't even engage with that play. Now, to me, aftercare was always, if I take somebody to a triggery danger zone, emotionally or physically, I need to be there to put them back together. And I've engaged with some people, that I didn't feel that they got to that space, but they were maybe told by other doms that you were guaranteed aftercare no matter what. And then when I didn't provide that aftercare and the word got out that I didn't give the aftercare, I started getting feedback from other players. He must be a dangerous player because he didn't provide. And so that's mixed expectations. And I wanted to mention that
Uneducated expectations.
Well, misunderstood. Yeah. Like one person says, this is what I'm expecting. The other person says, well, I'm pretty good with that. But then all of a sudden it doesn't mash up. And that doesn't necessarily make somebody a dangerous player. That just
No.
means that there was two misunderstood expectations going in.
Yeah, like people think that I'm a dangerous player as a top because I don't provide aftercare. It's something I pre-negotiate with
Yeah,
people.
you say it right off the bat.
Yeah, and I'm like, bring a friend. If you're really worried, bring a friend.
Bring
and
a
they
teddy
will
bear.
bring a fucking teddy bear. And that person, however, I will not push you past the point of needing catharsis. You know, I really can't probably swing that fucking hard. You know, like I probably couldn't get to someone. Like I'm not
Well,
gonna
even mind
cut so
fuckery.
deep or
Mind fuckery. If you
Yeah.
know somebody's triggers and you're familiar with them and you step into that area where you're like, oh, I'm gonna touch these. I'm not gonna drill into them, but I'm gonna touch your triggers and see how that feels. And you're going in that edge space. You need to be prepared if all of a sudden you push those triggers too hard.
yes.
You know, and then the consequences of that. You know.
Yes,
So
I mean, I'm also not a monster. If a person is crying, and I usually play with friends.
I've got a monstrous side.
Yeah. Well, in my top energy is also very monstrous.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, boom, motherfucker, like mic drop, and then I'm like, I'm gonna go have a cigarette. Like.
You're done. Cold on the floor.
Yeah.
Weeping.
And it's hard for me to be nurturing to a person that I just like, you know, had that top energy of aggression out. Right. It's hard for me to.
So
be
you're a
able to
method
switch it.
actor. You just hold it out till you get home.
No.
Fuck that guy.
I'm. No, I'm more. I don't know. I just get this like fucking fuel of like I am
Invincibility.
awesome.
Yeah, that's top high. It's
Yeah.
a top high.
Yeah, it's a glorious place to be.
Well, there's also subspace where people like
Yes.
give up all control and they just allow themselves to float off into la la land.
Which is a
and-
beautiful place to be. I would like to say.
yeah, I've only been there a couple times. I don't bottom a lot, so you know. Yeah.
I love it.
But I get that at the gym. When I train at the gym and I beat the shit out of myself at the gym
Mm-hmm.
and I'm floating on the way home, that's exactly the same thing that I got. But it's also a lazy man's high when you just let some dudes hammer the shit out of you, you know. So
This is true.
yeah.
It's very fun though.
It can be if you're interested in that. So if people want to, well, we didn't talk so much about poly, but I think we touched on it.
Yeah, I think we did.
If people want to hear more about you, how can they look you up? Where can they find you?
Why Choose One is on like every platform, but mainly Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor app, and there's oodles and oodles more. But Why Choose One is very like the way I speak. I have no shame. If you don't like hearing what I've talked about today, you probably won't like my fucking podcast.
Yeah, you get pretty raw, right? I've listened to a couple. I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
you touch on some stuff, right?
I do.
Mhm.
Like even one of my episodes is actually like, so I'm also writing a book. I've been writing a book for a long time, and it's actually about unconsented things.
So abuse.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're touching on that for better or worse. Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I've actually gotten a lot of feedback from people that are like, that was amazing. You know, I loved hearing that chapter because I in my writing I don't.
Well, I'm an
write
abuse
as a-
survivor, and I think it's fair to say that you're an abuse survivor.
I am, yeah.
And through the kink community, we've worked through a lot of that shit.
Absolutely. Like
Mm-hmm.
I worked through majority of my kink stuff, or
your
sorry,
trauma stuff.
My trauma stuff with kink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, when I went to my therapist and I started unpacking kink, she's like, She was surprised. She's like,
Yeah.
how long are you going to do this stuff for? I'm like, well, probably forever. You know,
Yeah.
this is like my ritual cathartic kind of thing that I do, you know, to work through my trauma. And she's like they associate it so much with just like violent sex. And they
Yeah.
don't see it as anything but that.
Oh my god,
right?
I've been diagnosed as a sex addict.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of my sexual freedom ways.
But there's also that element, if it's not causing any toxic elements in your life, is it an addiction, right? So
Yes, which was not the case actually.
Mm-hmm.
She was actually judging the fact that I was in an open relationship at all.
oh yeah, that's you
And
have
she
to
said it
find
was
the right
completely
people.
doesn't work. It doesn't a thing. I was like, okay.
That's very, very
That's
interesting.
nice.
Yeah, like there's it's funny. I want to keep going, but we got to wrap it up pretty soon.
Yes.
But online there is this being sex positive and being sexually predatory are separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't understand the difference, or a sex addict, you know what I mean? And if you don't understand the difference, you are possibly an addict or a predator. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If you don't understand the difference between sex positivity, addiction, and predatory behavior, the chances are you might be addicted or a predator.
Yes.
So, yeah, maybe we need to examine that in all of us. What is a
Mm-hmm.
sex positive attitude as opposed to a sex negative attitude? Right?
Whether or not it brings toxicity into your life. Are you
Yeah.
doing it for the wrong reasons? You know, like
Is
are
anybody
you,
victimized?
Yeah. Especially yourself.
Ooh, well, not just especially yourself, because there's a lot of dudes, maybe from a female point of view or a woman's point of view,
Yeah.
that's like, am I a victim of this situation? Do I allow myself to be victimized?
Yeah.
But I think male toxic behaviors, are you victimizing people along the line?
This is true.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's.
I mean, it goes vice versa. I guess both ways.
yin yang,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming out.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Special places.
Special places. Bye,
Bye-bye.
motherfuckers.